Yeah, for sure. I think there's different ways different people go about doing stuff. Or like, I'm also too like if I don't know how to do something, like I love learning just in general. So I'm always like, oh, like I want to know like how you did that, or like, oh, like I don't understand how that. Like, let me figure this out. So like how I know like next time to communicate with someone or something like that. Like especially for like editors. With that being where I got my start, I can communicate with editors really well because that's like my bread and butter. So like I know what words to use. I know like what they should do with like the computer or whatever, or like why the video isn't working, stuff like that as well. But I mean, there's even when I'm working on stuff that I'm not particularly don't have the practical skills with. I think trying to learn that like on a surface level, and then as well just like having done just a bunch of like different creative stuff, I think you get an idea of what just general systems are, like how to communicate with like specialists to like execute your vision, even if you're not like don't have the technical knowledge yourself to like kind of go back and forth and spitball problems and creative solutions and stuff like that.
Well, welcome everybody to the Full Battery Media Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Trace, and we have an awesome guest with us today. Now, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. Hi, my name's David Summerall. I've been making content on YouTube for both myself and creators for the past 10 years now. I started in 2014 or something like that, and I've been doing it pretty much full-time since then in just different capacities that they're doing full-time with creators or agency work and stuff like that. Right now, I run a content agency called the Creator Lane that does brand strategy and content creation consulting for both creators and businesses. And then I work on doing kind of in the early stages of kind of doing some more content about like creator education and just making good content and stuff like that. So yeah, that's about the loose summary of everything, but I'm sure we'll go more in detail.
That is awesome. But I love the creator education part, because even yesterday I was talking to my team and my team of creatives and editors, and we were looking at this one guy who I can't remember his name, but his whole channel is about educating how to make better reels. And we were looking at the cuts, looking at the angles, looking at the things, and I just was like, I was so inspired. I was like, I want to go out and find some people who can do that. Because like it was just next level. I mean, my team is performing at a very high level. We're filming great stuff, but this was like next level. And so I went out and I was like posted, and I created this LinkedIn post for the job. And I was like, all right, let's see what comes in the door. And what came in the door was wanting. Let's just say, give people credit for trying, give people credit for where they're at. But what I noticed was like, there's this gap between people are like, well, I'm creating content. I'm a creator. You are, but there's another level of artistry and creativity that has now entered the arena. Talking head videos used to just be, hi, you're sitting there, but now people are coming up with really interesting things. And this guy was doing a talking head video, and he's like, all right, you start here, you deliver here, then you turn here to do your line to this side, and then you come back, and then you look here. And the final product was amazing. And it was interesting because the quality is really climbing. And education is so important because, you might want to be a creator, but if you're not really learning and on the cutting edge of things, you're going to get left behind. This industry moves fast.
For sure. Yeah. No, I definitely think kind of the reason why I've gotten into it is I think I still have my own personal projects and stuff like that, but I think in general, like as I've started like more so documenting stuff I know, and like stuff like I'm just like as I've like grown into like skilled teams and stuff like that, and then like I'm working on kind of like I have freelancers right now that are doing most of my stuff, but just like kind of documenting my thought process and stuff like that, just so like I don't have to repeat myself like a bajillion times or give the same note and like stuff like that. Just right. Like try to dump my brain into like PDFs and documents and stuff like that people can reference on my teams. But also then I kind of realized there's definitely a gap in the market for kind of a lot of this stuff for the beginner person. Like I think about me 10 years ago, like I started out as an editor, and like that was what got me into all the stuff. But like now I didn't know anything about thumbnails, or I didn't know anything about like how to write an intro or like how to write a hook or formatting even on like videos and stuff like that, or like screen real estate, or like how to like size things so like they're in frame, or just there's so many like little bits and pieces you pick up after making like God knows how many videos. I tried to count one time, or because I was like updating my portfolio. It's like definitely like above 300. I kind of stopped after there. But like it's just you make so many videos and you just like learn little bits and pieces along the way. So basically, trying to just make that content accessible to people who are just like looking to start out, and then also just make good quality stuff that like I feel like reflects my brand and agency and stuff like that, and can also demonstrate the value that I can provide to people who want to work with me. And if they want to do it themselves, they could watch some of the educational stuff. If they just want more help and more hands-on approach, could offer that to them as well.
That's awesome. It's awesome because, people come into this field with most of it, Simon Sinek starts with that, has the start with why, right? Most people are getting into media or content because they have something they want to say. And so
Yeah.
the beauty is that the tools are out there now for you to be able to do it. But not that you can say you can do it better, but you can. There are more effective ways to really get your message across, and that leads to my my first question for you, like getting into this, because we're talking about like at the end of the day, certainly everyone would love to make videos. Just make them, right? Sure, I'd love to put things out, but like I remember going to my friend's impressionistic art exhibit in university, and I walked in there and I was like, what's happening here? And he's like, well, when I strapped the banana to the wall, and I was just like, I'm not getting it. And yet some next door, one of my other friends had an art exhibit that was also interactive, also very modernistic, but yet there was a way that it was done that people were like, oh, this is interesting. It pulled people in.
Yeah.
So what separates a video that simply performs well with one that becomes unforgettable?
I think it depends on like if you talk about the difference between like short form and long form content. I think short form content, it's hard for me honestly to remember like, oh, that like TikTok I saw like really stuck with me or whatever. I think long form is definitely where you have that more. I think in short form of like unforgettable, I guess would swap out to like what like grabs someone's attention or like actually makes them stop scrolling when they're just doom scrolling to like actually watch your content, and maybe they'll stop for the next one if you were able to like provide them value or like entertain them in a way that like grabbed their attention and like stood out from the rest of the pack. I think for long form content, I think it's more so about finding like what works, but then like putting your own spin on it. So like you don't have to like, in my opinion, like when I work with people, I'm like, we don't have to like reinvent the wheel like every single time. Like there's things that are like proven to work, and like we can like use those to our advantage or whatever. But I think the creators that like are able to see what works and be like, okay, there's a market, there's a demand for this, you can make content for yourself and have artistic expression and stuff like that, but as well as try to see like what people actually want to see, or if you're already an established creator and have an audience, and like knowing what connects with them and like what they want to see as well. I think those videos, when you're able to like do that and then add your own unique twist on it that like only you as a creator or you as a brand, that you have that like value proposition that like only you're able to add to something, that's when like I remember videos or whatever, or like from a specific creator, or specific creators too that I watched. Like some creators, I like their editing style. Some people I just like, they don't have the best editing style, but I like their commentary or like the points they make, or like they'll go over film and TV and stuff like that. And I just like the analysis they do. So like for me personally, I watch like different creators for different reasons, because I feel like everyone has kind of the thing, that like little skill set that sets them apart.
I love that. The two things that you said, I want to talk about the short form. Like, honest to God, like the video yesterday that I remember, like of the short form of the guy talking about the editing. It was literally yesterday that I saw it. There were two things that popped for me on that. First of all, the dude was dressed like Naruto, and he had like the Naruto music in the background, and he had like a little shinai, that little knife that he did, and he did these movements, and I was like, wow, damn, I like that cartoon, and it's a great anime, and I don't know why it stuck, but it was something that stuck. And I was like, well, there's your hook right there. He's dressed like Kakashi Sensei.
If you were watching editing tutorials or whatever, probably most of them are in like t-shirts or whatever in front of their computer or something like that. Like that's just something that'll get you to stop subconsciously to be like, oh, this is different than the last 30 I've seen.
100%. But yet what kept me watching was the content. So he got
Yep.
the hook. The hook was, but I kept going. I was like, well, this is a really good video. This guy's got a lot of information. So it was a perfect example of hook plus content, but for long form, like you were saying, long form, it's something else. Like long form, I mean, obviously there's the hook, there's that, but you're right. Like for me as well, when I want to watch a different person, it's because, there's something in there that's interesting to me, whether it be, the conversations on a certain podcast, the way that person reframes things, whether it be the interesting type of questions they're asking, like you think about that. Why do people like Joe Rogan? Well, Joe Rogan says crazy stuff, and it's the stuff, it's like strain of consciousness, and people go, wow, I would love to have said that, but I feel all this restriction in my daily life, so I can't, and that's kind of what it is. You get someone like Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is like, he asks, what would people do for money? Which is an end-old question of time. Would you rat out grandma for money? Dude, that's a great question,
Yeah.
And then you move into other creatives. Like I love watching these tutorials about different, video editing, because these guys just show me techniques. But you're right. But there's something that I think that a creator has to lean into that is their thing. For me, I'm not gonna lie. Do you know what I did before for years and years as like a side hustle? Living in Asia, I taught English as a side hustle.
Okay.
So I've worked as a creative I started getting into film and television and YouTube in 2008. Like right when YouTube was kicking off.
Yep.
Like I've been in this a long time, and it's been fun,
Day
man.
one.
I started in day one, man. I started in movies. I got to work in Hollywood, got to work with Ron Howard, and like I was like, dude, like let's apply some of these cool film techniques to YouTube stuff. And people are like, why would you want to do that? It's just an internet hobby. I was like, come on, man, are you guys for real? And then it took off. But one of the things that I saw early on for myself is like having been a teacher, because I was living in Asia, as it was my side hustle was just teaching, so I could get a visa and stay in Asia. But like, I love educating people. And for me, whether it's a podcast or my daughter's content or the stuff I make for clients, at the end of the day, I view every single video as a chance to educate someone. And that's my hook. That's my thing, and hopefully I do it okay. But if I don't, it's all right. Oh, well, that's my thing. But like, I think people really have to identify what's their thing,
Yeah, and also just copying someone else's thing too, like, isn't going to get you like that far as well. Like you've got to there's creators, and I mean, you can get to a certain degree, like depending on like how much volume you put out, like you'll get somewhere. But like I think the creators that like are able to stick around and have like an actual career out of making content, like they all have the thing that makes them. You know what I mean? And you're able to, I think audiences are able to kind of suss that out, or like feel like that authenticity, like through the content or whatever, where it feels like, oh, this was like an actual creative thing that someone spent time on, and it's not just like mass produced. Like that's why, like, I don't think like VO3 or like AI videos are gonna really take over anything, where it's like, I'm not like anti-AI by any means, but like it's just like, I don't know, it's a computer did that, like I don't care, it's not that entertaining.
Right. I work with business professionals. I work, that was like part of my bread and butter is helping business professionals create reels and create content to kind of market themselves. And then one of the guys came up and he's like, there's a new thing where it takes my likeness and I put in a script, and it's like, and then it will read it for me, and it's going to be a little AI me. And I was like, man, people want to see you because you mess up, because you are you. And like that thing it's not going to have your analogies, and it's not going to have though I think it's an amazing tool. And for some people, rock on. But like, I was reading like the percentage of AI podcasts that are out there. And dude, I love my AI. I love going and asking AI questions. I love using it as a tool, but I agree. Like, I just don't see it going that way. And again, also not anti-AI, but one of the things that I think is important and special in content is, and this is like a music thing. I'm a big dude. Right here. I'm an old guy, but I love analog stuff. I love analog stuff. Old analog cameras. I've got vinyl. And my daughter and I, we were listening to a record on vinyl. Not a record is vinyl, but we were listening to some music on vinyl. And she's like, why? It sounds so horrible. And I was like, but that's the crazy part. Like, you think about that. For thousands of years, millions of years, humans couldn't record stuff. We couldn't keep things. But now we created these techniques. And what I'm getting at is sometimes your imperfections are part of who you are. And like, you got to learn to just embrace, what it is that is special about you, not what's special about Tom, because, Tom was successful, like you said, but we don't need to be Tom,
Yeah.
Tom's great at being Tom. Let Tom be Tom. You can be something else. And I think that that's one of the challenges that I see with a lot of young creatives, a lot of creatives in general, is that people go, oh, hey, what he did works. I need to do that. Maybe,
Yeah.
but maybe also you need to look at what you could do or change it so it's authentic to you,
Yeah. I think there's definitely for sure like a balance between like learning and like being like taking what applies to you, and like I don't know, like if you were inspired by like you had like 10 people who you were creatively inspired by, it's like, okay, well, like I like that he does this, I like this person's editing style, I like this person's how they like commentate, and like you just, I think, identify just in general like the creative taste that like define like your whole palette and stuff like that. Like that's what you can like take all those like little bits and pieces of inspiration and kind of make your own palette that you can paint or create with overall.
Yeah.
And then also too, the flip side of it is like seeing what doesn't work or like what you don't like, or like I
Yeah.
think for me too, it's like, why do I hate this video, or like why do I hate this? Oh, because it's, I don't know, it was misleading, or the editing's bad, or the audio sucks, or the camera, or like stuff like that too. It's like on the flip end of it, it's like, why do I not like this? Like what is not even, especially too if it's like a mass popular thing or something like that that's like supposed to be generally culturally accepted as good, if I'm like, I don't really connect with this or like it, like kind of diving into that side of it as well.
I love that. Well, that's the thing. One of the best ways to identify what you like is to identify what you don't. It's like very easy. I don't know quite what I'm looking for. Well, what are you not looking for? When I was looking at, I had a couple editors that submitted their content last night, and I was looking at it. I was like, I'm not feeling this one, but I couldn't identify what it was like in the beginning that I wanted. Then I was like, well, I don't like this style of cut. I don't like this style of framing, and the transitions are just not that great. And it was easier for me to start thinking about defining what I was looking for something. So I love that. Now, let me ask you this. When you start a new project, what's the first question you ask yourself or your team to guide the creative direction?
I think it depends on, if we're talking like new, like there's absolutely nothing. I think the first thing that like I usually end up diving into is like the branding and the video and like how it's going to look and feel. And a lot of that I've had to do kind of for my agency in the past like 6 months or so. And like I think just starting to publish some short form content and stuff like that, and I've recorded a lot, but like from ground zero was kind of like, I wanted, like with it being like an agency and a brand and stuff like that, like I wanted it all to like look and feel consistent like across everything. So like everything from like my website and my landing page to my social posts, and like the images and like static images that I'll post on LinkedIn with like text-based content compared to the video stuff, and like the long form videos I've got and the short form I'm putting out now. Like all of it will feel very connected to each other. So like I think about kind of that user experience a lot with like every time that like a user, because like also do, there's like repeat users, especially with short form content, that like aren't subscribed to you, but like they might get little bits and pieces where if they scroll past your stuff enough time, if you're using the same font every time, if you're using the same color every time, if you're using the same camera angles, stuff like that, where it's just consistent, you can kind of reinforce those patterns of user behavior and stuff like that, where they can equate your stuff to like how it looks at it. Also for returning viewers and stuff like that, it gives them like something familiar to come back to, where like they feel like it's not, it can be new every time and like you can iterate and stuff like that, but I think there is something to be said about like brand consistency, and also like having something that like viewers feel like they're coming back to. It's like a TV show they're watching, or like it's not just different every time. There's that familiarity like for people who have invested in it as well. So I think like starting out from scratch, it's like, what is that going to look like, and like what do I want it to like look like on a loose level? And then once you have that, you can kind of, that'll say you don't have to make that decision every single time you make a short. And that allows me, when I have those rules and kind of guidelines, which can be broken at any given time if I decide to, but like it lets me create faster knowing I have all that stuff locked in, where I'm not having to decide that every time I make a video.
I love that, because one of the challenges that I ran into early on with one of the channels that I was building with I do an educational channel with my daughter called Ilani's Little World, where we go out and it was something I created during the pandemic because we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. And there were and I was like sitting there trying to teach my daughter, and I had nothing to use. And I was like, well, I don't have great lessons. So I'm wondering if other parents don't have great lessons, fixing kind of that pain point. So I started creating this green screen content. Like, let's imagine us going to the Amazon and
Yeah.
meeting all the different animals in the Amazon. And so we kind of created that. And we had this standard format where like we're in the bottom, the lower quarter of the screen. And then we have this design around us to make it look like we were traveling, and we used magic. We'd press a little magic button and we'd journey to a new location. And one of the things that I found early on is like we were able to kind of establish what we were doing. And then, you can learn and evolve. And I said, you know what? There's not kids that have podcasts out there. What if we started to interview like seasoned professionals, like a scientist or a rocket scientist, and ask them how to make a rocket? And what we did is we found something that was our niche. And then we kind of created a standard that was easy to emulate. And, my editors were like, well, we want to try this because other people are doing this. And I was like, well, we kind of have what we do, and they're like, we should go out and be doing more vlogs. And I said, if we go out and do more vlogs, like, I love where I live, but it really localizes it, like, well, hey, we're out here in Vietnam doing this again. And so when people watch it, they're like, well, these guys are the people in Vietnam, right? I said, but right now what we're doing is, we have this green screen. People don't know where in the world we're at or what we're doing. And so it became like, my point being, though, it was really easy to kind of drill that in. And once we had that locked in, it was easy to train my editors because everyone knew what we were doing. There was this understanding. And certainly we had new creative types of things we did. But once we were able to hammer in on that, it helped us start to scale. Because I think one of the things that I see a lot of creators having a hard time with is people struggle to scale their content beyond their own like bandwidth, what they're able to do.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you this too, like, what are some systems or frameworks you've seen to help people grow a creative team in a sustainable way and not get burned out?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've led teams from where it's just like a couple guys going on something to like almost like teams of like 15 to 20 people working like full time on a project. So I think I've had, it kind of was very trial by fire, and definitely kind of a learn on the job type thing of like how to best be able to get my vision across to like my team members, and then also like be able to rely on them also as well, because like I hired them or like had them on my team because I also like their artistic taste or like what they liked as well. But usually when I'm building out a team in general, I usually hire or like look to go for like more specialists where like I'm kind of a master of none, where like I like all parts of the process. I like jumping over here doing this thing and like just giving feedback, and like I have a loose understanding of Photoshop or editing, or like I can do things at a surface level, but like I like working with specialists to like go back and forth and like spitball and be like, what if we did this? Or like just like let them kind of like do their best work and like kind of creatively inspire them to like give them the feedback they need to like make something better, or like offer an outside perspective or go back and forth and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it comes from like training. When you bring on someone, it's like you can't just expect them on day 2 to understand what the goal is and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I hired this person and my life hasn't gotten any easier yet. Well, it's like, well, yeah, you got like at least a couple months depending on the scope of what they're doing or whatever, where like the more time you spend with someone and like let them know why you do something or change something, or like why this is going a certain way or whatever. I think just in general, talking to like teams and stuff like that, I always try to be just fully transparent, even like on calls, if it like doesn't necessarily apply to them or something like that. Just the more I can pump what I'm thinking out there and just give reasoning and rationale behind my thoughts, that's what I try to in scope when I'm working directly with people. And as well too, like I'm never one to be like, I'm right, we're doing it this way all the time. So I always tell people to like challenge my opinions, or if they have a different idea, like let me know or stuff like that. So I like working in like a collaborative environment because I think it makes me make my best stuff when I'm able to go back and forth with either one person or multiple people and stuff like that. I'm not too precious about like ideas or anything like that. So I think just being able to foster an environment where people feel like they're able to go back and forth on stuff, and like everyone's working towards a common goal of just try to make the best stuff for whatever given project.
I love that. I had a way of doing it. I thought I knew everything. And then one of the things I realized as I was growing my teams is like, dude, there are people with better ideas than you have. There are people
Oh,
that
for
will come
sure.
and go like, yeah, like, dude, let's try this. And I'm just like, that's not the, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, oh, wow. I had no idea that we could do that. I have one worker named Lynn. And one of the things I love about Lynn is she's lazy as hell. Now let me explain what that means and why I'm saying that. I love it because Lynn finds ways around workflows that streamline things. She doesn't want to have to do things the really, really, really hard way. And she was able to find ways that we can do things in a way that streamlined our entire workflow massively. And I was just like, wow, Lynn, laziness for the win, And she's like, not
Yeah.
laziness, ingenuity. And I was like that's what that's whatever we call it. It's way to go, But one of the things too that you were talking about too, and and Lynn's not actually lazy. She works her butt off, but she just likes to find ways to make things, flow better. And so one of the things that you were talking about and just popped in that I immediately had popped into my head with scaling teams toe is standard operating procedures and really getting like things dialed in. I was traveling back to the USA this weekend for a shoot. And while I was there, I was filming for my wife, and we had I was in this venue, and suddenly I heard, "Hey, Sean!" And I turn around, and it was an old friend from work years ago, a long time ago. A guy I knew. His name's Zeke, and I'm giving a shout out to Zeke right now because Zeke's awesome in many ways. But I want to talk specifically about one thing that I noticed from him. He was running this media team at a casino. And we were there, we were filming. And one of the things that Zeke was doing that was really interesting was, so they had a venue there. There was a musical venue. And then the next day they had a banquet in the same location. And so they had to get in there and within like an hour and a half after the show was done, take down the stage, take down all of the seating, auditorium level seating, and break it down so it becomes this giant ballroom. And one of the things that I noticed was like we finished up and he's like, I want to say goodbye to you before you guys drive out of here. I haven't seen you in 20 years, man. Definitely, I'll find you. And he did find me, but he went from a suit, and tie that he'd been wearing during the show. Dude was in a t-shirt and slacks and he was just sweating up a storm. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, we're breaking down the room. I've got to get this room flipped in 24 hours. And one of the things that I was like, he was the most senior person there. He was the head of their entire media team, for a large casino. And he was there doing the work himself. He was sweaty. He was leading from the front, and he was showing people the right way to do it. And I was just like, he was there getting his hands dirty. And it was like one of the things that I asked him about that. I was like, Zeke, what is this all about? And he's like, you know what? If I want to be leading people, I need to be able to get in there and get it done. And I was just like, dude, yeah.
Yeah.
And then and then I was thinking about it too. And yet at the same time, he was leading from the front, but there was also the way to do it. And by being there, by being involved, he was able to model that. And, and I guarantee you, I haven't worked with Zeke in that setting, but when I worked with him before, he did the same thing, when we were working at the company before. And one of the things that I noticed is that Zeke would always create people that could deliver consistently at a high quality because they had it modeled for them. They had it shown to them. They had it breathed into them by this guy, And it's such a powerful testament to, if you want to create a powerful team, it all comes down to the type of leader you are.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's different ways different people go about doing stuff, or like I'm also too, like, if I don't know how to do something, like, I love learning just in general, so I'm always like, oh, like, I want to know like how you did that, or like, oh, like, I don't understand how that, like, let me figure this out, so like how I know like next time to communicate with someone or something like that, like especially for like editors. With that being where I got my start, I can communicate with editors really well because that's like my bread and butter. So like I know what words to use, I know like what they should do with like the computer or whatever, or like why the video isn't working, stuff like that as well. But I mean, there's, even when I'm working on stuff that I'm not particularly don't have the practical skills with. I think trying to learn that like on a surface level, and then as well just like having done just a bunch of like different creative stuff, I think you get an idea of what just general systems are, like how to communicate with like specialists to like execute your vision, even if you're not like in the don't have the technical knowledge yourself to like kind of go back and forth and spitball problems and creative solutions and stuff like that.
I love that. Well, let me ask you this: like, what is the most underrated skill for leading a creative team effectively? What can people really do that makes the team head in the right direction?
A common goal for sure, or like a direction, or kind of like what you mentioned too about before about having like specific editing styles and stuff like that. Where I always like am trying to like improve the next video or whatever, and like not in a way where it's like, oh, let's just make the same video and over again. But like if you let people have the repetitions of like making the videos the same way, or like where they're remotely the same way, like the more you do reps, like the faster those reps will be and the more they'll be able to do them. And like as stuff gets easier over time and like they're able to pump out like the same quality, like then pushing to be like, oh well, now we're able to make these faster and this like same quality, like what else can we add to it now to like elevate it just like that little extra 1 or 2% every time, and like trying to allowing, I think like with that consistency and like letting people have like some predictability, especially editors too. This is probably my biggest, I guess, hack with managing editors, but it also works for writers or creatives or thumbnail or anything else. But just like letting people kind of exist in a boundary and like get used to like the repetitions, but then still pushing a little bit to be like, oh, well, how can we make this better than the last one? And like over time, what people are able to produce in shorter amount of times and stuff like that, because they have that consistency. And I mean, anytime you do anything for the first time, it's going to take you longer than the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time, and so on. So that time goes down. And as far as just leading teams and stuff like that, I'm a creative person. I'm also like an analytical person. I love business and stuff like that as well. I think for me, also a big system and processes person. I think a lot of creatives, either you're not and absolutely hate systems and processes and you think they kill creativity, or you love them to pieces and you think that like you would not be able to produce anything if you didn't have a formula or like something that you could rely on. Where I like having things that are set in place where I don't have to make the same decisions every time I create something and stuff like that. And that's able to make me create faster and at scale and stuff like that. So I think I'm definitely good at systems and processes and like looking at how we can systematize stuff, and like also with leading a team too that helps people be able to execute stuff the same consistently as well.
Yeah, I love that. And, I remember when I was teaching at this one school, where professors said, we have to have the structure that we do things in. You have to have the way we're doing them again and again and again. And I said, well, why do we always have to have it in such the same way? Why does it have to be so repetitive? And he's like, because when you have things that are repetitive like that, then you create the safe space for creativity to start to grow. You have that space for creativity to kind of be able to flourish. If people are always like, I don't know, editor comes in the door and he's like, I don't know what we're doing today. I'm terrified because I might have, 17 hours of editing today and then, 1 hour tomorrow. That person's not going to be able to like really function as well because they don't know what's going to be going on versus, maybe not the time. I know there are things sometimes you got to crush it on that day. But the point being, like, if you can create systems that allow people to kind of have that stability, have that structure, then there's room to grow. There's room to be able to take creative risks. But let me ask you this, because this is kind of a similar question. How do you foster an environment where people feel free to take those creative swings, even if it might not work?
I mean, I think anyone that like works with me, like I kind of hold things like very loosely creatively. Like I'm not like my way or the highway person. Like I think in general, I think that comes from the top down. I think it's different. Usually if I'm bringing someone on my team, like I trust their opinion and like their taste too. So like I know that like for me specifically, some days I have better ideas than other days. So like I don't know everything all the time. So I think for me, like I hold my ideas very loosely and like I like that collaboration and just being able to, I always tell people like, especially like with ideas or like pitching or anything like that, I'm not like, no idea is a bad idea or like a stupid idea or a stupid question, but because it's like it might get like it could be bad and whatever, but you say something bad and then someone else hears it, but they're like, oh, but like this. And you're like, oh, well, that's the best idea ever. Then that person would have come up with that idea if this person didn't say that one thing. Or sometimes you try something and I mean, sometimes it'll be like, we should do this. This will be really good. Like it'll get like a rough draft back or whatever. I'm like, yeah, no, no, we're not
Didn't
doing
work.
that. But I'm glad that we saw like that's also like rough drafts or like rough mocks or like anything too. And like, iterating to like not making everything to like full on completion or whatever where it's like 100% finalized. If I have like a loose idea where I'm like this could go 50-50 where this will either be like really good or like the worst thing ever, so like try like a little bit, but like if you get to like this sucks, like just tell me it sucks because like it also like could suck. So like try to save time there, and then also just like making sure people know that like if you say like one bad thing or have one bad edit or do something, like it's not the end of the world. Like as long as people are like working and we're getting stuff done, it's like with creative stuff, it's not you're going to get it on the first go around. Like I go through, I mean, pretty much for any video I make, I go through like 4 or 5 drafts with all my editors, and they know that like the me on my end, like seeing the same video multiple times, like from different angles, like lets me give different feedback where like maybe I could sit down and review it on the first draft and maybe add 30 notes or something like that compared to doing 3 drafts where I add 10 each time. But sometimes I'm not going to notice a note until something else has changed or this changed, and then oh well now we can change that and stuff like that. So I think it's about definitely like revisions and like knowing that you can go through revisions, and like a first draft is quite literally a first draft. Like it's not meant to be the final product.
100%. And that's the thing that I think from being an educator, like I had to drill that into people as my students, you know, like when people would write just a story and they're like, it's not perfect. I'm like, it's not supposed to be.
Yep.
It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to just be something you create. And then after you create it, you go, oh, okay. Now let's see how we can start evolving it. I mean, we just finished up. I'm going to plug my wife's new music video that we just finished producing. It is awesome. It's called Slady. It's dropping on the 20th, and I love it. So hopefully it's going to just be an absolutely awesome experience. And man, the number of edits we had on that music video was extremely high. And it was great because we went in once and we were just sitting with the editor and I was like, he didn't know that I originally had started out in editing. And so I was like, we were speaking the same language. But so I was working with the editor and I was giving him all these editing notes. And he was like, dude, this is awesome. You know, it's like, and he's like, I'm really sorry about making these mistakes. And it was like, as I looked at him, I was like, these are not mistakes, dude. These were choices. And like, we're wanting to go and try something else. And he's like, all right, I can try that. And then we tried it. And it was like, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And like, sometimes we had to go, sorry, man, we tried that. And he's like, not at all. But it was like, by fostering a safe place, you can achieve more. You know, I think that one of the things for me with my team, and this is something I try to do every single day, is to make sure that at the end of the day, they come in and they feel safe at work. And I do that through comedy. I do that by, you know, just going in and trying to lighten the energy every couple hours and just checking in with people. It's more than that, but just checking in and kind of creating this atmosphere where people can feel creative and have a fun time. Because if someone's terrified about making a mistake and they're terrified that they're going to get yelled at and they're terrified that, you know, they try something, then you're going to have a team that sits there and stagnates and is not feeling the courage to try new things. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we want to be growing and getting better. And you can only do that if you have a team that feels safe to do so, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think I always tell people it's like, they're just videos at the end of the day. It's not like we're not curing cancer. Like, it's like, especially like with content, it's like, it's just supposed to be fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that deep. Like, there are times where it's more stressful than other times you got deadlines and try to get stuff done. But like, at the end, that also helps me too. Sometimes I'm like, I'll get caught up in stuff or feel stressed. I'm like, this really isn't that deep at the end of the day. Like, like slightly nihilistic, but like also like we're just like, I mean, like it's fun and like we get to make like cool stuff. Like it's really not that deep. And you got to take that seriously so you can keep getting to do that stuff. But also on the other end of it, it's like, it's really not that deep. Like we'll get there eventually, and like fostering that environment where people feel like they're able to make mistakes. The two, I think with team members too, I think communicating sometimes, like, I don't know, so there's more freelancers and stuff like that. And I think some people like kind of communicating the goal of like, hey, like we're not just like, yeah, this could be done, but like there's more things we could do to like make it better, and like we're not gonna like nitpick it to complete pieces where like we're making like changing a stroke like 0.02% or whatever, or like dialing in the drop shadow, or spending 2 weeks trying to like lock in what that looks like. But also like, I don't know, some people are more like, well, it's done and it's done, and like they don't kind of get like the, okay, well, like we're going to add the extra 10%, like go the extra mile and like make content, like the videos that stand out. And I think all the videos really that I see that stand out are the ones that kind of go the extra mile and add the extra little bit of pieces on them that make them like that little extra bit of like polish and stuff like that stands out from other stuff.
I love that. That last 10%, man, or that extra 10%. Now, let me ask you this. What, excuse me, if you could give one piece of advice to a creator trying to move from posting to building a business, what would it be?
Posting is in like they're trying to start like a brand or like a company,
Yep.
or like their
Trying
own
to get
product,
going.
or like they're trying to like build and scale a team. And like they're going from like solo creator to like, oh, I have 2 editors and like thumbnail people, and like I'm trying to scale my content team.
The latter one.
Okay. Probably, I mean, honestly, it's just like not your, I think creators like to think that like they are the best at everything, and it like really they're not. Especially like logistically, you can't be like, you can't be the best thumbnail person, you can't be the best editor, you can't be the best person on talent on camera, you can't be the best writer. Like creators, I think in general, like personality creators, like they're kind of like jack of all trades, like they can do all parts. And I think kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, it's like you're bringing in specialists that like could just like focus in on like that one area, and you're getting like a full person's attention to that one area, where it's like right now you're splitting your time between like, if you have 10 steps in your video process, you're splitting 10% of your energy across each one of those 10 steps to get to the final product. Where if you bring on 10 people or like one person to like focus on each step, you're getting like 100% of that person's attention like just to that one step of the process. So like that person's able to like arguably like know it better than you, because like editors, like they just edit all day, like that's what they do, that's they only edit. Or thumbnail people or Photoshop people, they just do Photoshop, they know like the technical stuff better than you do. But like being able to like articulate creatively what you want, allowing your people to like know, or like know that like, okay, you don't know everything, you know what I mean? Like you did hire people to like come in to like help you like accomplish your goal and like scale stuff up. So I think it's, and being communicative and like going back and forth, and just like just that, I think feedback is really good. And like also just like explaining, you can train people like a lot faster if you just explain like why you're telling them to like change something, like rather than being like I don't know, like make the car red instead of blue. Like person had it blued, you're like make it red, and then they just make it red. But if you're like, oh, you should make it red because last time we had a blue car, it didn't do well, or we don't like blue cars, or like just explaining like why gives the person context that they remember like, oh, I'm not going to do that again, like we can't do that, or that doesn't work. And just like explaining rather than just be like, no, make it this way, but like, no, it needs to be this way because XYZ, people will retain that information faster, and like justifying your decisions and stuff like that, and like just explaining the rationale behind why you're doing stuff, rather than just being like, change this, change this, change this. Because you just tell people to change things, they're not going to know why they're changing it. You know what I mean?
That's awesome, man. You know, it's like it goes back to the why. You know, I like when I was trying to teach something to my daughter the other day, and she looked at me and she says, I was like, you know, it's like as a parent, you tell a kid like, just do this. They're not going to do it. That's not happening. But when I was explaining why, my daughter, we're training her little pet puppy right now. And I love this little cute thing. She's 3 months old. She's a little poodle, and she's a smart dog. But we've trained her on to peeing on the pad. We'd take the pad outside, you know, and now my daughter wanted to put blankets all over the room. And my dad's like, wow, look at all these pads. And I was just like, I had to explain to my daughter. I was like, nee, don't do that. And she was like, well, I don't know why. And I said, your dog thinks all of these are pee-pee pads, and every single one of these things is going to get peed on in about 20 minutes. And she's like, no, it's not. 2 seconds later, the dog walked over and was like, look at this blanket, peed right on it. My daughter was like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, changed it right away. But by getting that comprehension, that telling her the why, it really did make a difference. And we were able to not repeat that problem and assist our poor puppy in figuring out the right way to do things, But it came back to that why. Because again, like you said, if you just tell someone something, they're not going to make the change. Or they might make it, but they're not going to get.
You're going to have to tell them to make it again, because you're not going to tell them why. And like, that's also like with training people, like I like to work with people that like learn over time. Like, it's like if I tell them to do, like if I leave a note one time, it's like I'm very cognizant of like, okay, well, this applies for everything moving forward. Like I can't repeat myself and like do that, like, but also too, like the goal is like if I'm like giving feedback, to not be giving the same note on every single video. Like we could just infer that we're going to use that same color on every single one, or we're going to use this font on every one. Or like, I think seeing like with team members and stuff like that, people who can like take what you say, then like apply it over time, or like apply it to multiple things and like learn over time. I think that's also like being able to spot those team members and like stuff like that, investing in those people and giving them like more of your time and stuff like that, that definitely compounds as well.
I love that. Well, brother, I want to say thank you so much for coming on today, but want to ask before we finish, where can people look you up and find some of your work?
Yeah. If you want to look up my personal stuff, it's under David Summerall, and then my agency is called The Creator Lane. That's where I'm posting more actively right now and kind of ramping up kind of content and stuff like that for just general content creator education. Doing kind of some shorts right now. I'm scripting out long form content right now and kind of getting all that in place. I'm a very like I was saying, like got my systems and stuff like that. So right now I'm making a lot of content and hasn't necessarily like gone up yet. I don't know when this specific podcast is going to come out, but I'm getting ahead on a lot of like my shorts and long form content and stuff like that. So as I get more client work coming in, I've got stuff in the back burner as well for my own personal projects. So if you're interested in content creation, feel free to check that stuff out. And if you own if you're an established creator or like a brand or business looking for help in content creation, hit me up.